Dadaji arrived in London in 1919, and in July 1920, he again met Netaji, his school friend. Subhash Bose came to stay in Dadaji's heart and grew momently in stature. The more Dadaji knew him, the more he loved him, till it became almost an exquisite adoration.
दुख जाए तिलक परेछ दुख जाए तिलक परेछ मेथा कण्ठके मुकुट लभेछ हानिल जे शिला तारे दाओ माला से जे चिर विषय বাজাও সারথি শঙ্খ তোমার দূর করো ছায়া ভয়ে।
Dadaji's ideal was Ramakrishna, who had said that the object of life is to meet and live in the divine, whereas Subhash said that the object of life was to serve our motherland, India, by liberating her from the foreign yoke which bled us dry ruthlessly. Dadaji, with a courtly bow, used to tease him. Not that I love India less, but I love Krishna more. Subhash would retort, I duly applaud, my dear, but how can we famished plebeians enthuse over Krishna, a la well-fed patricians like Dilip, born with a golden spoon in his mouth? Dadaji says of him that he had not met a man so unutterably dedicated to the one ideal of delivering motherland India from the ignominy of an alien domination. To him, India was a dreamland to love and be inspired by at every turn, a sacred land, Punya Bhumi.
ओगो त्रिंशकटी अंतर निधि जाए हो तब जाए त्रिंशकटी अंतर निधि जाए हो तब जाए ओगो बाजाओ सरती शंख तुम्हार दूर करो छाया भय त्रिंशकटी अंतर निधि जाए हो तब जाए दुख जाए तिलक परेछ दुख जाए तिलक परेछ मेथा कण्ठके मुकुट लभेछ हानिल जे शिला तारे दाओ माला से जे चिर विषय বাজাও সারথি শঙ্খ তোমার দূর করো ছায়া ভয়ে ঘুমের দেশে বাজাও শঙ্খ বাজাও ঘুম ভাঙাও 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 সারথি ভাঙাও হে ঘুম ভাঙাও সাগর জাগর শঙ্খে যুগের ঘুম ভাঙাও ওগো বাজাও সারথি বাজাও সারথি শঙ্খ তোমার দূর কর ছায়া ভয় মরণের ভয়ে মরেছিল যারা, মৃত্যু বিজয়ী হলো আজ তারা। ইন্দ্রজালি তোমার ইন্দ্রজালে সর্বহারার মরুভূমি মাঝে মুক্তি সাগর জাগালে বজ্রতালে। শক্তি তালে শক্তি তালে শক্তি তালে আধারের শিশু গাহিছে প্রভাতি, কহে তারা ডাকি শেষ হলো রাতি। তাদের সাধন বিগত বেদনা শত দল হয়ে রয়ে। বাজাও সারথি বাজাও সারথি শঙ্খ তোমার দূর কর ছায়া ভয়। ওগো বাজাও 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 সারথি বাজাও বাজাও বাজাও। ওগো জাগাও জাগাও জাগাও, ওগো শঙ্খে তোমার তন্দ্রাপুরী জাগাও জাগাও জাগাও। ওগো बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत, बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत। मन मंदिर में प्रीत बसा ले, वो मूर्ख वो भोले भाले। मन मंदिर में प्रीत बसा ले, वो मूर्ख वो भोले भाले। दिल की दुनिया कर ले रोशन, अपने घर में जोत जगा ले। दिल की दुनिया कर ले रोशन, अपने घर में जोत जगा ले। प्रीत है तेरी रीत पुरानी, भूल गया वो भारत वाले। प्रीत है तेरी रीत बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत, बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत। नफरत एक आधार है प्यारे, दुख का दारू प्यार है प्यारे। आ जा असली रूप में आ जा, आ जा असली रूप में आ जा। तू ही प्रेम अवतार है प्यारे, ये हारा तो सब कुछ हारा, ये हारा तो सब कुछ हारा। मन के हारे हार है प्यारे, मन के जीत जीत बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत, बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत। ये भारत माता है दुखियारी, भारत माता है दुखियारी। दुखियार हैं सब नर नारी, भारत माता है दुखियारी। दुखियार हैं सब नर नारी। तू ही उठा ले सुंदर मुरली, तू ही बन जा श्याम मुरारी। तू ही उठा ले सुंदर मुरली, तू ही बन जा श्याम मुरारी। तू जागे तो दुनिया जागे, तू जागे तो दुनिया जागे। जागे उठे सब प्रेम पुजारी, गाए तेरे गीत बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत, बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत, बसा ले अपने मन में प्रीत।
The poet was not wrong when he said that leaders were born, not made. To see Subhash Chandra Bose, our irreplaceable Netaji, was to be convinced at once of the truth of this finding. Let me explain. We were at the time fellow students in the Presidency College, but as he attended classes different from mine, we rarely met except in the college corridors. And on he came to be the cynosure of all eyes, and began to be talked about among us all because of his radiant personality. His noble, comely figure would stand out among a crowd even in those days. There is a light on his face, we used to comment in whispers whenever he passed us by here and there. In a word, I had fallen in love with him the very first day I clapped eyes on him, and that with all my native will to worship. Once in one of our student socials, when we sat close to each other, I can still remember the deep flush that suffused his fair cheeks when I sang my father's song, Bharat Amar. Will hold before our eyes the noble ideal of those rapturous days, to new create the promised land, the end of dream and love and grace. Each grass blade of this hallowed land is blessed by God's compassionate eyes, and angels rain on this great race their amarants down from the skies. But although I came to feel on that day that our psyches had come closer to each other, we had not exchanged a single word. Only his starry eyes had conveyed to me that he had approved and responded. For all that, I longed for an outer contact with him, but I could not, taking my courage in both hands, call on him, till lo, he came to me like mountain to Muhammad. My heart missed a beat as he said straight away, without beating around the bush, I have come to invite you to our debating society. Debating society? I gasped. Yes, he nodded. Debates must be encouraged among us. Our country, when we shall have won our freedom, must have great debaters, parliamentarians, and preachers. The next incident swiftly rocketed him up into the limelight as an organizer as well. Briefly, an English professor insulted an Indian student, and a hue and cry was raised. But as no redress could be obtained, Subhash came to the fore, and with a few students gave the delinquent a sound spanking within the precincts of the college. Its repercussions shook the foundations of Whitehall across the seven seas, and an instant inquiry was held. Subhash was hauled over the coals as the ringleader. He could have got off with a lighter punishment had he apologized, but as he refused, he was rusticated. Henceforth he came to be dubbed a revolutionary in the black book of the CID, and hailed by us all as our firebrand leader to be, till he came to be called the uncrowned king of Bengal and the idol of students all over India, especially after his dramatic resignation in England from the ICS. His deeply perturbed father frantically went on writing and wiring to him not to resign and court immediate imprisonment, but he was not to be shaken. While in England, his swift rise to fame was almost meteoric in its giddy speed, so much so that some verbose patriot fanciers in London sent him a framed address. Another student, burning to paint the town red and aspiring to outblaze the rest, proposed to me that we lead a procession on horseback with him at our head before the Buckingham Palace. Subhash used to redden to the roots of his hair whenever his admirers let themselves go like this. He used to comment scathingly that such soda water effervescences got none anywhere. Emotionalism, he said, even slogan building may help on occasions, but I prefer real solid work and sacrifice. You have known so many Indian students here. Tell me, how many have you met who really burn to stake anything for our country? 99% of them go abroad to win a degree, either to get a good job or to become a lawyer, don't they? Pooh! When such careerists talk of bullets and fight to the death, do they not become the laughingstock of the whole world? Against Europatriots and fire-eaters, he used always to inveigh in this strain, emphasizing how cheap was all this gush over things that caught the eye. He used always to place application, nishtha, and solid organizing work far above rhetoric, and would end up with To win freedom is not a joke, Dilip. You remember Rabindranath's lines, auspicious Conch's friend, never shall announce thy homecoming, nor the tender candlelight welcome thee ever at night, nor thy heart's darling's passing sweet, tearful lovelit eyes thee greet, for thee at every bend shall wait and boom the thunder clouds when shadows loom. In the context of his subsequent lonely death in a foreign land, with the name of the motherland on his lips, his early love for these memorable lines becomes invested with a deeper significance. It shows him up as the leader to be, Netaji by universal acclaim, a man whose last words were an exhortation to his countrymen so dear to his heart. Habib, he said with his last gasp after the air crash, I am dying for my country's freedom. Go and tell my countrymen to continue the fight. India shall be free, and before long. Even more heartwarming is his speech to the INA troops in Singapore, 5th July 1943. For the present, I can offer you nothing except hunger, thirst, privation, forced marches and death. But if you follow me in life and in death, I shall lead you to victory and freedom. And he said to the recruits on the 3rd February 1944, blood is calling to blood. Arise, we have no time to lose. Take up your arms. There in front of you is the road our pioneers have built. We shall march along that road. We shall carve our way through the enemy's ranks. Or if God so wills, we shall die a martyr's death. And in our last sleep, we shall kiss the road which will bring our army to Delhi. The road to Delhi is the road to freedom. On to Delhi, Delhi chalo. It does take one's breath away. This dare and audacity, not for nothing had he loved passionately Danton's famous exhortation in the French Revolution, Pour le vaincre, il faut toujours de l'audace, encore de l'audace, toujours de l'audace. To vanquish them, our foemen, one must have always audacity, still more audacity, audacity all the time. I could have gone on and on to bring to the fore many hidden facets of his magnetic personality. I could have given numerous inspiring instances of his flaming soul of purity, his inaccessibility to fear, his single-minded devotion, and above all, his inherent mysticism. But as all that cannot be done within the compass of a brief discourse, I will end with a talk I once had with Sri Bulabhai Desai. But before that, I must say something in answer to some of his decriers who say that he could not achieve anything except the spectacular, since India did not need his noisy army to win her freedom. All such statements stem from a warped perspective. For any impartial critic must agree that Subhash's spectacular success in building up the rebel Indian army, starting from scratch, did spread disaffection among the rank and file of the Indian soldiers under the British, a fact which was proved to the hilt on the occasion of the famous INA trial at the Red Fort, Delhi. If this had not happened, and had not our rulers in India dreaded the outbreak of another Sepoy uprising in 1946, especially after the Bombay and Karachi naval mutinies, they would have kept India under an iron yoke for at least another decade or two. Had not Churchill at the end of the Second World War warned that he had not come to preside over the liquidation of the British Empire? So I humbly submit that what Subhash had lived and died for would not have been achieved so soon, but for his burning patriotism, radiant personality, and above all the impressive legion he had led personally at Imphal in a campaign that was within an ace of success. His failure, however, does not mean that he had died in vain. Even such a hard and uncharitable critic as Mr. Twoyer had to admit in the epilogue of his book, The Springing Tiger, there can thus be little doubt that the Indian National Army hastened the end of the British rule in India. The agitation which surrounded the trials turned the issue of independence for India into an instant burning question once more. Subhash's suddenly amplified figure, says Dilip Kumar Roy, added to the romance of an Indian army marching, singing to Delhi, galvanized a frustrated nation out of its torpor and substantially damaged the insulation of our soldiers from the magnetic currents of popular enthusiasm for immediate independence. Now to take up the lost thread. A few years ago, in 1947, I think, I was given a reception at the Cricket Club, Bombay, where Bulabhai Desai, the famous counsel for the INA soldiers, was asked to preside. I will give here the gist of what he confided to me with a lift of pride in his voice, which still rings in my ears. I am told, he said, that Netaji cherished you as one of his most intimate friends. So I feel all the more tempted to tell you what you will doubtless love to hear. You know how prejudiced I had been against him, how ruthlessly critical of many of his activities. But now listen, he added warmly, when as a counsel for the defense of Shah Nawaz, Dillon and Saigal of the INA, I began to con over the various documents of his achievements, it simply took my breath away to have belittled one who was not only a dreamer, but a born leader, patriot, statesman and martyr as well. I tell you, I felt repentant as never before, for I could no longer doubt but that when the history of the Indian independence movement would be written, he must rank as a king among men, a nonpareil who might have well claimed Napoleon's saying as his own. Impossible? There is no such word in my dictionary. Really, Dilip Babu, to have dared as he had dared, to have created single-handed an army under a state with a bank, a hierarchy of officers, lawyers, legislators and organizers of different departments, and all that in an alien land. Well, I did sometimes marvel at the miracle and rub my eyes to be reassured that the documents were genuine. Yes, Dilip Babu, the old man's voice quivered. I did then bow to him and shed penitent tears that I had reduced him all along with a few others as blind as myself. He spoke with a rare eloquence on that unforgettable evening, an eloquence which made my blood tingle. As he wiped his eyes, I said to him, I cannot tell you, my friend, how deeply your tribute to my dearest friend Netaji has moved me tonight. Only let me tell you something which may surprise you even more. You have stressed his greatness as a dreamer, leader, soldier, statesman, and what not. I should only like to add that his inmost soul was that of a rare mystic, so much so that I have often regretted that he did not follow his Swadharma. For if he had, I feel certain that our country would have gained much more than an abiding inspiration from his great sacrifice. What I wish to emphasize is that he was the only man I have met in my generation on whom the noble Vivekananda's mantle might have fallen. Don't misunderstand me, though. I would be the last person in the world to belittle all that we have got from him, nor have I any doubt that his life of unswerving rectitude, astonishing purity, incandescent love of freedom, and above all, his power to stake his all for the ideal he set before himself, will remain a source of deathless inspiration to posterity. I would only stress that he had it in him to follow the highest call on earth, that of God, and that he could have reached his goal if he had harked to that supreme call, because he was by Swabhav, inner makeup, what the Bhagavat calls an ekanti, single-minded, a dedicated soul. That is why he could never go in for half measures, nor help putting all his eggs in one basket when answering the call of patriotism. And so, my friend, often when I think of him, I can almost see him reciting in his throbbing voice a famous poem of Chesterton's. It is something to have wept as we have wept. It is something to have done as we have done. It is something to have watched when all men slept, and seen the stars which never see the sun, in a time of skeptic moths and cynic rusts, and fatted lives that of their sweetness tire, in a world of flying loves and fading lusts. It is something to be sure of a desire.
বন্ধুগণ, আপনারা জানেন যে 1940 সালের শেষ দিকে আমি যখন দেখিলাম যে মহাত্মা গান্ধী পরিশেষে সত্যাগ্রহ সংগ্রাম আরম্ভ করিয়াছেন, আমি তখন অনুভব করিলাম যে এখন পৃথিবীর সম্মুখে ভারতের মান মর্যাদা রক্ষা হইল এবং অতঃপর ভারতের বিপ্লব আন্দোলন এরূপ ব্যাপকভাবে এবং নূতন প্রণালীতে চালাইতে হইবে যাহাতে আমাদের স্বাধীনতার প্রচেষ্টা সার্থক ও সাফল্যমণ্ডিত হয়। এই উদ্দেশ্য সিদ্ধির জন্য 3টি বস্তুর একান্ত প্রয়োজন আমি অনুভব করি। প্রথমত, বিশ্ব পরিস্থিতির এবং বিশেষ করিয়া যুদ্ধ পরিস্থিতির নিরপেক্ষ ও সঠিক সংবাদ সংগ্রহ করা। দ্বিতীয়ত, অ্যাক্সিস শক্তিদের সহিত সংযোগ স্থাপন করা এবং তৃতীয়ত, প্রবাসী ভারতবাসীদের সহায়তা সংগ্রহ করা। বন্ধুগণ, আজ আমি আনন্দে আপনাদিওকে জানাইতে পারি যে আমার এই 3টি উদ্দেশ্য সিদ্ধ হইয়াছে। আমাদের শত্রু কর্তৃক অধিকৃত দেশে ছাড়া যত ভারতবাসী আজ ভারতের বাহিরে প্রবাসে আছেন, তারা সকলে এক বিরাট আন্তর্জাতিক সঙ্গে সুসংবদ্ধ হইয়াছেন। তাহারা একদিকে ভারতের আভ্যন্তরীণ ঘটনাবলীর সহিত সংযোগ রাখিতেছেন এবং অপরদিকে আন্তর্জাতিক ব্যাপারের সহিত সংশ্লিষ্ট আছেন। যাহারা ইংরেজের সকল প্রকার অত্যাচার, নির্যাতন ও নৃশংসতা অগ্রাহ্য করিয়া ভারতের ভিতরে মুক্তির সংগ্রাম চালাইয়া আসিতেছেন, ঠিক সময়ে তাহাদের নিকট প্রয়োজনীয় সাহায্য পৌঁছাইয়া দিবার জন্য প্রবাসী ভারতবাসীদের প্রতিষ্ঠান এখন সকল আয়োজন করিতেছে। বন্ধুগণ, আপনাদের নিশ্চয়ই স্মরণ থাকিবে যে আমি ইতিপূর্বে বহুবার আপনাদিওকে বলিয়াছি এবং প্রতিশ্রুতি দিয়াছি যে যখন আমাদের আকাঙ্ক্ষিত শুভ মুহূর্ত উপস্থিত হইবে, তখন আমি এবং আমার সঙ্গে আরো অনেকে আপনাদিগের পাশে আসিয়া দাঁড়াইবে। আমরা সকলে তখন একই সঙ্গে লড়িব এবং দুঃখ ভোগ করিব এবং তারপর একই সঙ্গে আমরা সাফল্য ও স্বাধীনতার গৌরব অর্জন করিব। ব্রিটিশ ব্রডকাস্টিং কর্পোরেশন অর্থাৎ লন্ডনের রেডিও এবং তার বক্তা মিস্টার বার্নউড অস্থির হইয়া উঠিয়াছিলেন যে আমি সঙ্গে সঙ্গেই আমার এই প্রতিশ্রুতি কেন রক্ষা করিতেছি না। আমি তার প্রত্যুত্তরে বলিয়াছিলাম যে আমি প্রতিশ্রুতি দিয়াছি আমার দেশবাসীকে, ব্রিটিশ ব্রডকাস্টিং কর্পোরেশনকে কোনো প্রতিশ্রুতি দিই নাই। যে প্রতিশ্রুতি আমি দেশবাসীকে দিয়াছি সে প্রতিশ্রুতি অবশ্য অবশ্য রক্ষা করিব। তাই আমি আজ আপনাদিওকে বলিতে চাই যে উক্ত প্রতিশ্রুতি রক্ষার জন্য আমি এখন এক পদ অগ্রসর হইয়াছি এবং আজ আমি ভারতের সীমান্ত হইতে বেশি দূরে নই। আপনারা জানেন যে 1941 সালের জানুয়ারি মাস হইতে আজ পর্যন্ত আমার গতিবিধি কেহ রোধ করিতে পারে নাই। অতএব আমি যেদিন ভারতের সীমান্ত পুনরায় অতিক্রম করিয়া দেশে ফিরিব এবং স্বাধীনতা সংগ্রামের শেষ অধ্যায়ে যোগদান করিব, সেদিনও কোনো পার্থিব শক্তি আমার পথ রোধ করিতে পারিবে না। স্বদেশবাসী বন্ধুগণ, পরিশেষে যেসব সাথী আজ অন্তরীণের অথবা কারাবাসের লাঞ্ছনা ও নির্যাতন ভোগ করিতেছেন, আপনাদের মারফত দিয়া আমি তাহাদের নিকট আমার সাদর অভিনন্দন ও প্রীতিপূর্ণ শুভ ইচ্ছা প্রেরণ করিতে চাই। তাহারা যেন মনের উৎসাহ, আনন্দ ও স্ফূর্তি না হারান। তাহাদেরকে গিয়া বলুন যে মাতৃভূমির সম্মান ও মর্যাদা তাহারাই রক্ষা করিয়াছেন। তাহাদের লাঞ্ছনা ও নির্যাতন পৃথিবীকে জানাইয়া দিয়াছে যে পরাধীন ভারতবাসী আজ ইংরেজের সহিত সংগ্রামে নিরত। আমরা যাহারা আজ ভারতের বাহিরে কাজ করিতেছি, আমরা তাহাদের গর্বে গর্বিত। প্রতিদিন তাহাদের কথা আমরা চিন্তা করি এবং তাহাদের উদ্দেশ্যে প্রীতি ও শ্রদ্ধার অঞ্জলি নিবেদন করি। আবার তাহাদের নিকট গিয়া বলুন যে তাহাদের এই বিরাট দুঃখ ও ত্যাগ কখনো ব্যর্থ হইতে পারে না। ভারত পুনরায় স্বাধীন হইবেই হইবে এবং স্বাধীনতা সূর্য উদয়ের খুব বেশি বিলম্বও নাই। স্বাধীন ভারতে সকল কারাগারের লৌহ কবাট উন্মুক্ত হইবে এবং ভারত মাতার শ্রেষ্ঠ সন্তানেরা তখন কারা প্রকোষ্ঠের অন্ধকার হইতে মুক্তি ও আনন্দের নির্মল আলোকে বাহির হইয়া জয়মাল্যে ভূষিত হইবেন। ইনকিলাব জিন্দাবাদ, আজাদ হিন্দ জিন্দাবাদ। This is Subhash Chandra Bose speaking to Indians in East Asia. My countrymen in East Asia, while I am in Tokyo, I desire to address a few words to you, and I have no doubt that you will give them due consideration. In the first place, I desire to thank you most heartily for the warm and enthusiastic welcome that you have given me on the occasion of my public appearance in East Asia, and for the assurance that you have given me of your wholehearted support to our efforts to liberate our dear motherland. I feel overwhelmed at this manifestation of your burning patriotism and spirit of sacrifice. I have received numerous telegraphic and postal messages from you direct, while other messages I have read in the press, and all these messages have given me great joy and satisfaction. You know that I am always an optimist. Nevertheless, I must say that the response that I have received has exceeded my fondest expectations. I can only say in reply that I feel proud of you. Since the outbreak of the war in Europe and in East Asia, I have been saying repeatedly that we, the Indian people, could not have wished or even dreamt of a better combination of circumstances for helping us to achieve our liberty. When the world forces are helping us in this way, our task has automatically become very much easier than what it would have been otherwise. This fact should further strengthen our self-confidence and optimism and hearten us considerably in the fight that lies ahead of us. I am overjoyed to see that you have already realized that the responsibility of winning freedom does not rest merely on the shoulders of our countrymen at home. It is but natural that they should bear the brunt of the burden, and they have been doing so already. But at the same time, every Indian, no matter where he may be living at the present time, has a duty towards his country, and he must contribute his due share towards the final victory. I am convinced that India cannot hope to be free until all Indians living abroad perform their duty in this momentous world crisis. Moreover, we have no right to ask for or expect help from any quarter until we ourselves have first of all done our very utmost. Our countrymen and our sisters and brothers at home have been doing their best in the circumstances in which they are placed. But the enemy is ruthless and desperate, and he is armed to the teeth. Against such a brutal foe, no amount of civil disobedience or of sabotage or of revolutionary terrorism can be of any avail. If therefore we want to expel British power from India, we have to fight the enemy with his own weapons. The enemy has already drawn the sword. He must therefore be fought with the sword. But it is not possible for our countrymen at home to organize an armed revolution and to fight the British army of occupation with modern arms. This is a task which must therefore devolve on Indians living abroad, and particularly on Indians living in East Asia. Friends, if you compare the history of our national struggle with the histories of similar struggles in other parts of the world, you will realize that we in India have lacked one thing and one thing alone. We lack the strength and organization whereby we can meet force with force. It is our task here in East Asia to supply this one want and thereby eliminate once for all the only drawback that we have in our national struggle. I therefore desire that all able-bodied Indians living in East Asia should volunteer to fight with me for the liberation of our motherland. This is our supreme task and duty, before which no other type of service counts for much. All those countrymen of mine who are prepared to fight for the liberation of India will please get into touch with me at once, either direct or through their local organization. I am confident that with the help of my countrymen in East Asia, I shall be able to organize such a gigantic force as will be able to sweep away the British power from India in conjunction with those who have already been fighting at home. The hour has struck, and every patriotic Indian must advance towards the field of battle. Only when the blood of freedom-loving Indians begins to flow will India attain her freedom. Inqilab Zindabad. Azad Hind Zindabad.
शुभ नामे जागे सब शुभ आशिक मागे गाने सब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे अहोरह तब आह्वान प्रचारित सुनि तब उदार वाणी सिंधु बौद्धि जैन भारती मुसलमान ख्रिस्तानी पूरब पश्चिम आगे सब सिंहासन पासे महाजय गाथा जन गण एक विधायक जय हे भारत भाग विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे घन निबिड़ निशीते निरीत मूर्छित देवे जाग्रत शील तव विठल मंगल नत नयने अनिमेषे दुष्टात्मे आतंके रक्षा करिले अंके तुम्हें माता जन बन